What do you think then was Boris's demise?
Oh, there are all sorts of reasons. I think part of the reason has to be Brexit. There are still a lot of people who resent the fact we left the European Union, and therefore to bring down the standard bearer of Brexit was a triumph for them. And you had people like Lord Heseltine and Lord Adonis saying no Boris, no Brexit. And I think they really thought that. And I very much hope it's not true, that I think we've taken a risk. The establishment of the Conservative Party, I mean, look where the Cameroon establishment are, other than Philip, actually, eccentrically. They're all with Rishi. So the Cameroon establishment never really warmed to Boris for all sorts of
But the
reasons.
Thatcher supporters are also with Rishi, aren't they? He's got Howard, he's got Lawson, and Peter Lilly.
Michael Howard was a great backer of David Cameron.
Indeed, that's true. But they were in Thatcher's cabinet.
Prepared him for the leadership, and William Hague, who was obviously Cameron's foreign secretary for an extended period.
But Lawson forcefully came.
Nigel Lawson. If only Rishi had been a Lawson-esque chancellor, we wouldn't be in the state that we're in today.
Now, Dominic Cummings. People might think the demise started there. Why did he employ him?
Because Dominic Cummings had been very successful, that he'd been a very important part of the referendum campaign. He seemed to be good at understanding the mood of the British people and campaigning on it, that his eccentricity seemed a price to be worth paying for his genius. And both of them are there. In the end, it turned out that his eccentricity was absurd and self-serving, and that he thought he was Prime Minister. And that was never going to work.
And then the other person people will question after the sort of the 2016 leadership that never happened was Michael Gove. Why did he bring Michael Gove in? People would say, crikey, the reports at the time, he was stabbed in the front and he never, managed to take the leadership at that time.
Well, Michael is a very able politician, a clever, interesting man.
And so he overlooked what might have been seen as this sort of backstabbing side because he thought he was an able politician.
I think all prime ministers have to appoint a range of people to their cabinets, and they need people who can run large departments. Michael had shown at education, where potentially Michael's the best education secretary in recent history. Kenneth Baker would be perhaps a contender for that title against him. But the two of them fundamentally reformed education for the better. After a number of education secretaries, including Margaret Thatcher, who closed a number of grammar schools, though it was very hard for her to refuse under the laws applying at the time. But those two were really transformative education secretaries. And having ministers who can run a department is something prime ministers don't necessarily have a huge supply of.
Does Boris really shoulder any responsibility for his demise?
Of course he does. People are always responsible for the things that they do themselves. That doesn't mean there are other people who weren't waiting there to catch them.
Listen, the world of politics, as you and I know, it is probably more complicated than anything else. I'm asking you these questions. But is Rishi to blame, really?
In what way?
That of his downfall, people will say, and you will be one of them, you're backing Liz Truss because Rishi did him a disservice, and that was part of the triggering and the downfall.
I don't particularly want to go into Mr. Sunak's personal behaviour. I think better to stick to his economic policy, and I think the Treasury orthodoxy has not been working and needed fundamental change. And I've been saying that consistently for some time. That isn't a thing that I've suddenly come out with, and I'd rather discuss the leadership in terms of the policies that I think need changing rather than individuals' behaviour for better or worse.
Okay, fair point.